Failure matters because it forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that growth doesn't happen in a straight line. We often imagine success as a smooth climb upward, but in reality, it is messy, unpredictable, and filled with detours. Failure interrupts our illusions of perfection and exposes us to the reality of progress it is earned through mistakes, retrays, and resilience. Without failure, success would be hollow, because the journey would lack the depth that makes the destination meaningful. Failure matters because it teaches us humility. When we stumble, when our plans collapse, we are reminded that we are not invincible, that we still have room to learn and grow. This humility becomes the foundation for real wisdom because it keeps us curious, open to new ideas, and willing to ask for help. Failure has a way of stripping away ego, leaving behind only the truth of who we are and what we need to work on. Failure matters because it forces us to innovate. When one door closes, we are pushed to search for another way forward. Many of the world's most significant breakthroughs didn't come from a first attempt, but from repeated failures that sparked new approaches. The light bulb wasn't invented on the first try, and airplanes didn't fly after a single design. Failure doesn't shut down possibility. It redirects us towards something better than we originally imagined. Failure matters because it reveals our resilience. It is easy to feel strong when everything is working in our favor. But when things fall apart, when the weight of disappointment presses down, that is when true character is revealed. The ability to get up after being knocked down, to try again after rejection, is proof of resilience. Every failure becomes a test of our endurance, and every time we choose to continue, we grow stronger. Failure matters because it builds courage. Once we survive the sting of defeat, we realize it doesn't destroy us. The fear of failing often feels worse than the failure itself. But when we face it head on, we discover that failure is survivable. That realization frees us from the paralysis of fear, giving us the boldness to attempt greater things without being shackled by what-ifs. A failure matters because it refines our focus. In the pursuit of goals, distractions are everywhere, and not every path is the right one. Failure cuts away what doesn't work. It shows us where we wasted energy, what strategies are ineffective, and which desires are superficial. In that process, our vision sharpens. We begin to see what is truly worth pursuing, what is aligned with our values, and where we should commit our energy moving forward. Failure matters because it connects us with others. Everyone experiences it, yet most try to hide it. When we are vulnerable enough to share our struggles, we invite others to do the same. In that exchange, we create trust, empathy, and connection. Failure becomes a common language that reminds us we are not alone in our struggles. Together, we can support, encourage, and inspire one another to rise again. Failure matters because it transforms us. Each setback changes how we see the world and how we see ourselves. We carry scars, but those scars become reminders of battles survived and lessons learned. Over time, failure molds us into someone wiser, stronger, and more compassionate. Success without failure might give us rewards, but it cannot give us depth of character. That depth only comes when we've walked through failure and chosen to keep going. Failure needs to be redefined because most of us grow up believing it is the end of the road. From childhood, we are conditioned to see failure as a red mark, a closed door, or a verdict on our worth. But failure is never final. It is simply a moment in time, a checkpoint on the larger journey of becoming. When we shift our perspective, we begin to see failure not as a dead end, but as a detour that holds valuable information for the path ahead. When failure is reframed as feedback, it loses its power to shame us. Feedback is not personal, it is informative. A failed exam is not proof of stupidity. It is feedback about how we studied. A failed business is not proof of incompetence. It is feedback about the strategy, the market, or the timing. When we strip failure of judgment and instead look at it as data, we gain clarity. Each stumble whispers clues about what needs adjusting. Seeing failure as feedback transforms frustration into curiosity. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? We begin asking, what can I learn from this? That shift in questioning turns defeat into discovery. Curiosity keeps us moving forward instead of stuck in regret. Every failure, no matter how painful, contains an answer waiting to be uncovered if we are willing to lean in and listen. Failure as feedback builds adaptability. Life is not rigid, and neither is success. Conditions change, people change, and opportunities evolve. If we treat failure as feedback, we become more flexible, able to pivot and adjust rather than cling to a single plan. This adaptability is what allows individuals and organizations to thrive in uncertain environments. It is not about perfection. It is about the willingness to evolve. Redefining failure also helps us break free from perfectionism. Perfectionism demands flawless performance, but progress demands iteration. The most innovative ideas are rarely polished in the first draft. They are shaped through trial, error, and revision. When failure is reframed as feedback, we stop expecting ourselves to get it right immediately and instead embrace the process of getting better over time. Failure as feedback cultivates resilience because it turns every setback into a stepping stone. Instead of feeling crushed by defeat, we begin to view it as part of the climb. Just as athletes review game footage to improve, we can replay our failures to extract lessons. With each cycle of reflection and adjustment, we grow stronger, more capable, and more confident in facing the next challenge. This perspective also empowers us to take more risks. If failure is final, risk feels terrifying. But if failure is feedback, risk becomes a necessary experiment. Every attempt becomes an opportunity to gather insights whether it succeeds or not. This freedom encourages boldness, creativity, and innovation, qualities that cannot flourish when failure is treated as fatal. Finally, redefining failure as feedback gives us ownership of our journey. Instead of feeling powerless in the face of mistakes, we reclaim control by choosing how to interpret them. Failure no longer defines us, it informs us. And with each piece of feedback, we grow closer to the person we are capable of becoming. Perspective is the lens through which we interpret failure, and that interpretation can either empower us or imprison us. Two people can face the same setback, but the stories they tell themselves about it lead to entirely different outcomes. One person might say, "I failed because I'm not good enough," while another might say, "I failed because I haven't figured it out yet." The event is the same, but the meaning is completely different. What we believe about failure shapes how we respond to it. The stories we tell ourselves after setbacks are often more powerful than the setbacks themselves. A lost job, a rejected proposal, or a missed opportunity doesn't inherently define us. It's the narrative we attach to it that does. If the story is about defeat, we shrink. If the story is about learning, we grow. Perspective doesn't erase pain, but it determines whether the pain becomes an anchor holding us down or a catalyst pushing us forward. Perspective matters because the human brain craves meaning. When something goes wrong, we instinctively ask why. That why can spiral into self-doubt or rise into self-discovery, depending on the perspective we choose. If we say, "This happened because I'm a failure," the meaning becomes destructive. But if we say, "This happened to teach me something," the meaning becomes constructive. The situation doesn't change, but our future does because meaning drives action. Changing perspective also unlocks resilience. Resilience is not about denying difficulty, it is about reframing it. Instead of focusing on what was lost, resilience shifts focus to what can be gained. This shift doesn't minimize the reality of hardship, but it prevents us from being consumed by it. When setbacks are framed as temporary and purposeful, we are more likely to rise again with determination rather than collapse under despair. Perspective is contagious. The way we frame our own failures influences those around us, our teams, our families, our communities. If we model defeat, others adopt defeat. If we model growth, others find courage to do the same. By consciously choosing a narrative of learning, we not only strengthen ourselves, but also give others permission to reframe their struggles. Perspective becomes a form of leadership. The stories we carry about past failures shape the risks we are willing to take in the future. If the perspective we hold is rooted in shame, we will avoid stepping out again. If it is rooted in possibility, we will try once more with even greater conviction. In this way, perspective becomes a predictor of progress. The past doesn't chain us, it is the perspective about the past that decides whether we are free or trapped. Perspective also transforms how we see ourselves in the midst of failure. When setbacks happen, it's easy to let them define our identity. I failed, therefore I am a failure. But shifting perspective separates the event from the self. It reminds us, I failed, but I am not a failure. I am someone in the process of becoming. That separation preserves self-worth while still allowing space for accountability and growth. Ultimately, perspective is a choice. The setback itself may be outside our control, but the story we attach to it is not. Choosing a perspective of growth doesn't erase the struggle, but it transforms the struggle into something useful. The power lies not in what happens to us, but in the meaning we decide to give it. Discomfort is often seen as something to escape, but in reality, it is the very space where growth takes root. When we step into discomfort, we expose ourselves to unfamiliar territory, new challenges, new skills, new opportunities. It is in these moments, when we feel stretched beyond what is easy, that our true potential begins to emerge. Avoiding discomfort may keep us safe, but it also keeps us small. Pain and discomfort are signals that we are doing something that matters. Just as muscles grow stronger when they are torn and rebuilt, our character strengthens when we endure challenges that test us. Every difficult conversation, every uncertain decision, every demanding project creates resistance that builds resilience. The discomfort we feel is not a sign of weakness, but a sign that we are pushing beyond our limits. Avoiding discomfort often leads to stagnation. When we only do what feels safe, we trap ourselves in cycles of repetition and predictability. Growth requires risk, and risk always brings discomfort. Whether it is speaking in public, starting a venture, or pursuing a dream, there will always be moments that feel uneasy. The choice is whether to retreat back to comfort or to embrace the unease as evidence of forward motion. Discomfort teaches us patience and endurance. In a world that craves quick results and instant gratification, discomfort slows us down and forces us to stay present in the process. Struggles rarely resolve overnight, and discomfort reminds us that meaningful growth takes time. The waiting, the uncertainty, and the effort are all part of building the perseverance that makes achievements worthwhile. Embracing discomfort also rewires the way we experience fear. Fear thrives in avoidance. The more we run from it, the larger it becomes. But when we face discomfort head-on, fear begins to shrink. We learn that we can survive awkwardness, survive rejection, survive failure. Each time we confront what makes us uncomfortable, We build evidence that fear has less power than we thought. Discomfort reveals what we value most. We only endure pain when we believe something on the other side is worth it. The long hours of training for an athlete, the countless revisions for an artist, the sleepless nights for an entrepreneur, all are acts of embracing discomfort because the goal holds meaning. Discomfort strips away the trivial and clarifies what truly matters to us. Living in comfort zones creates a false sense of security, but embracing discomfort prepares us for the unpredictability of life. The world will always hand us moments we didn't plan for, losses, rejections, changes beyond our control. If we have practiced leaning into discomfort rather than fleeing from it, we are better equipped to navigate those storms. The practice of embracing difficulty in small ways trains us for resilience in greater ones. Discomfort becomes a teacher when we stop resisting it and start listening to it. Instead of asking, "How do I escape this?" we begin asking, "What is this teaching me?" That simple shift transforms pain into purpose. The lessons are rarely found in comfort. They are discovered in the moments when we are stretched, challenged, and reshaped by discomfort itself. Adaptability is often misunderstood as weakness, as if bending means breaking. But in truth, adaptability is one of the greatest forms of strength. A tree that refuses to sway in the storm is the one that snaps, while the tree that bends with the wind survives. Resilience is not about being unshakable or immovable. It is about having the flexibility to adjust when life does not go as planned. The world is constantly changing, and rigid approaches quickly become outdated. What worked yesterday may fail today. Adaptability allows us to see beyond fixed methods and embrace new ways of thinking. When we cling too tightly to a single path, we close ourselves off to opportunities hidden in unexpected turns. Adaptability opens doors we might never have considered had everything gone according to plan. Being adaptable means recognizing that plans are not promises. Goals give us direction, but they should not lock us into one narrow outcome. When circumstances shift, adaptability lets us pivot without losing sight of the larger purpose. It's not about abandoning the destination. It's about finding a new route when the original path is blocked. The ability to adjust course keeps momentum alive even when obstacles appear. Adaptability also nurtures creativity. When faced with setbacks, those who refuse to adapt see only walls. Those who embrace adaptability see possibilities, detours, alternatives, and new solutions. Every failure or disruption becomes an invitation to experiment. Innovation is rarely born from perfection. It grows from the need to adapt to limitations and challenges that force us to think differently. Flexibility in mindset reduces the weight of pressure. If we believe we must never fall, every mistake feels catastrophic. But when we see falling as part of adapting, the pressure eases. Instead of being consumed by fear of failure, we learn to dance with it. Adaptability removes the illusion of perfection and replaces it with a commitment to progress, no matter how many turns it takes. Adaptability also strengthens relationships. Life rarely unfolds as we expect, and neither do people. By being adaptable, we learn to meet others where they are, to listen, and to adjust our expectations without resentment. This flexibility creates trust and collaboration. In both personal and professional settings, adaptability allows us to thrive in diverse environments and with different kinds of people. True resilience comes not from being untouched by adversity, but from knowing how to recover when adversity strikes. Adaptability is the skill that allows us to bend under pressure and then return stronger. It is the mindset that asks, "What now?" instead of "Why me?" This shift keeps us moving forward rather than stuck in resistance. The capacity to bounce back lies not in stubborn strength, but in fluid adjustment. When we embrace adaptability as strength, we free ourselves from the illusion of control. Life is unpredictable, and setbacks are inevitable. By choosing flexibility over rigidity, we learn not just to survive, but to thrive in the face of change. Adaptability makes resilience sustainable because it turns every challenge into an opportunity to grow, pivot, and begin again with renewed energy. And failure often disguises itself as disappointment, but beneath that surface lies a wealth of information waiting to be uncovered. Every misstep, every wrong turn, every plan that collapses carries within it data about what didn't work and why. Too often, people stop at the sting of failure and miss the lessons it holds. But those who are willing to look closer discover that failure is a teacher in disguise, offering guidance for the next attempt. When we treat failure as final, we silence its voice. But when we treat it as feedback, we open ourselves to insights we could not have gained otherwise. A failed idea can show us gaps in preparation. A failed relationship can highlight communication we neglected. A failed venture can reveal flaws in timing or execution. Each setback carries information, and it is up to us to decide whether we dismiss it or learn from it. Listening to failure requires humility. It means acknowledging that we don't have all the answers and being willing to examine what went wrong without defensiveness. This humility transforms failure from a personal attack into an impersonal source of knowledge. Instead of saying, "I failed because I am not capable," we can say, "I failed because I need to adjust my approach." The lesson is there, but it can only be heard when pride steps aside. Failure teaches us more deeply than success ever could. Success often affirms what we already know, while failure exposes what we still need to learn. The lessons carved into us by mistakes linger longer than the comfort of victories. They shape how we think, how we plan, and how we act in the future. What once felt like a painful setback often becomes the foundation of future strength and wisdom. Extracting lessons from failure also builds adaptability. Every time we analyze a setback, we uncover patterns, refine strategies, and develop new skills. It's like gathering tools from each experience. The more we learn from what went wrong, the more equipped we become to handle challenges in new forms. Over time, failure doesn't weaken us. It trains us to be sharper, wiser, and more resourceful. The lessons hidden in failure often point us back to our values. Sometimes we fail not because our effort was lacking, but because our direction was misaligned. A project that crumbles might remind us that we were chasing recognition instead of purpose. A career setback might redirect us toward work that fits our strengths more authentically. Failure doesn't just correct our methods, it refines our understanding of what truly matters. Learning from failure also requires patience. The lesson is not always clear in the moment. At first, all we feel is the sting of loss, and that is natural. But with time and reflection, clarity emerges. Looking back, we often see that what felt like devastation was actually redirection. The data failure gives us is rarely immediate. It reveals itself slowly to those willing to reflect, revisit, and reframe the experience. Every lesson drawn from failure becomes fuel for resilience. The more we listen, the more we grow, and the more confident we become in trying again. The sting of failure fades, but the wisdom it leaves behind remains. Those who learn from failure are not the ones who avoid mistakes. They are the ones who transform mistakes into stepping stones that guide them towards something greater. Purpose is the anchor that keeps us steady when life knocks us down. Without a clear why, failure feels crushing and meaningless. But when we are connected to something larger than ourselves, setbacks take on a different shape. They become part of a bigger story rather than the end of one. Purpose gives us context, and with context, the weight of failure becomes easier to carry. When failure strikes, it is tempting to quit, to walk away, to tell ourselves it isn't worth the struggle. But purpose acts as the fuel that reignites us in those dark moments. A strong why reminds us of what is at stake and why it matters that we continue. It shifts the focus away from temporary pain and onto the long-term vision. That vision gives us the courage to rise when everything inside us wants to stay down. Purpose transforms resilience from a reaction into a choice. Instead of simply bouncing back because circumstances demand it, we rise again because something inside us insists that we must. Athletes push through grueling training not for the sake of pain, but for the purpose of victory, growth, or legacy. Entrepreneurs endure rejection not because failure feels good, but because their vision drives them forward. Purpose turns resilience into determination. A strong why also makes sacrifice meaningful. Without purpose, the discomfort of failure feels empty. With purpose, the same discomfort becomes an investment. The late nights, the repeated attempts, the bruises of rejection all take on meaning when they are tied to something bigger. Purpose reframes struggle as proof of commitment, and that perspective makes it easier to persist. Purpose creates resilience because it reminds us that failure is not the end of the story. The why becomes the thread that ties failures together into a narrative of growth and perseverance. Every setback becomes a chapter, not a conclusion. This shift in perspective is powerful. It transforms failure from a tombstone into a stepping stone, from a dead end into a detour. When our why is strong, it also gives us courage to face fear. Fear thrives on uncertainty, and failure feeds that fear. But purpose reminds us that there is something more important than fear itself. The parent who works tirelessly for their child, the activist who fights for justice, the dreamer who pursues a vision, all keep going not because they are fearless, but because their purpose outweighs their fear. Purpose also builds resilience by giving us identity beyond failure. If our sense of self is tied only to outcomes, then every failure threatens who we are. But when our identity is tied to purpose, failures are simply events along the journey. They do not define us, they refine us. That deeper grounding prevents us from collapsing under the weight of temporary defeat. Ultimately, purpose provides the resilience to rise because it ties effort to meaning. People can endure incredible hardship when they believe it serves a greater cause. The pain of failure becomes bearable when it is connected to something worth fighting for. Purpose doesn't eliminate the struggle, but it gives us the courage to keep moving through it. Failure can be more than an obstacle, it can become the raw material that powers growth. When we learn to turn failures into fuel, we stop seeing them as weights that drag us down and start treating them as energy that propels us forward. The very experiences that once discouraged us can become the foundation of our confidence, creativity, and momentum if we choose to use them. Failure builds confidence not by preventing mistakes, but by proving we can survive them. Each time we fail and rise again, we carry evidence that we are stronger than we thought. Confidence is not built in the absence of failure, it is built in the recovery from it. Every stumble reminds us that we can endure, adapt, and keep moving, and that knowledge becomes a steady source of strength. Failure also sparks creativity. When one approach doesn't work, we are forced to look for another. This pressure to adapt often pushes us into new territory, where we explore ideas we may have never considered otherwise. Many innovations are born not out of initial success, but out of the persistence to find solutions when the first attempt collapses. Failure challenges us to think differently, and in doing so, it fuels invention. Momentum grows from the very act of trying again after failure. Each attempt, whether successful or not, keeps us in motion. Stagnation happens when failure causes us to stop, but momentum builds when we use failure as a reason to refine and move forward. That persistence, that refusal to remain still, creates the energy that drives progress. Failure, instead of halting us, becomes the push that keeps us going. Turning failures into fuel requires a shift in mindset. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" we ask, "How can I use this?" That simple question transforms defeat into resource. The energy we once wasted on regret can be redirected toward action. In this way, failure stops being an endpoint and starts becoming a resource for growth. Failures also fuel authenticity. They strip away pretense and remind us of our humanity. When we share our failures honestly, we connect more deeply with others because struggle is universal. This openness creates trust and encourages others to embrace their own setbacks as opportunities. By turning failures into fuel, we not only strengthen ourselves but also empower those around us. Each failure becomes part of a larger foundation. When we stack the lessons, the endurance, and the creativity gained from each setback, we create a powerful base for future success. Failures are no longer isolated scars, they are building blocks that shape resilience and wisdom. Over time, what once felt like loss becomes the very material that supports lasting achievement. The energy of failure is only wasted when we ignore it. When we harness it, it becomes the fuel that drives us beyond what we thought possible. Confidence grows, creativity expands, and momentum builds, all because we chose to see failure not as the end, but as the spark that ignites the next beginning.